Hi guys, thanks for joining me today. I'm Marilyn and my channel's Making with Marilyn. Now on today's video, I'm going to show you how I made a shirt that turned out like this. Now one of the local colleges has a gorilla for a mascot. So I found this image on Creative Fabrica. It already had the pink and the hearts on it, so I thought it'd be really cute for Valentine's Day. All I did was I added the words Gorilla Love at the bottom. Now the way I made this was using that DTF Sublimation hack. I've done a video on this. Now that video probably provides more information about the process. So if you haven't tried it or you're having problems with it, you might check out that video. And so I'll put a link to it in the video description below. Now after I made this shirt, I thought the colors just didn't really look that good on this color shirt. And so at the end of the video, I just fast forward through it. I made it on the white shirt, and I like how it turned out even better. So I'm printing my image on my Epson EcoTank 15,000, and when I bought this, instead of putting the ink in it that came with it, I filled it with sublimation ink. Now I've seen on YouTube that some people have success just using a regular inkjet printer as well. I have not had success with that, but my regular printer is not very good quality. Now I'm happy with how this came out, and so let's move on to the next step. Now that print looks really good. I don't even see any roller marks. Usually I have a few roller marks to deal with, and I don't see any this time. Maybe some very faint ones. Now you have the drips of the actual image, but everything else looks pretty good. So you don't want to wait too long before you do this next step. You don't have to run it to the table and be that worried, but you don't want to wait too long. Now I'm using Yamation DTF powder. This is the regular. They have fine, regular, and coarse. This is the regular. I also have a video on the fine. And then I ended up buying this at the Dollar Tree and storing it in here. Now about 5 minutes ago, I really shook this up in case there were clumps. I didn't want to shake it up and immediately open it because I wanted the powder to have time to settle. So all I'm going to do is pour this on. And when I say pour, I mean pour. I do not spare it at all, as you can tell. And it's kind of hard to control how much goes on out of this big container. But because you can dump it back in the container, you really don't have to worry about it. But I should get a scoop because that is a lot of powder and it's really difficult for me to control coming out of there. So now all I'm going to do is I'm just going to kind of shake this back and forth so it moves and I make sure it sticks to all of the ink. All right, I feel confident that that is a nice coating. So what I'm going to do is just try to dump this back into the container. Now I still have a lot of powder on there, so now I'm just going to tilt this up and just tap. All right, so the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and put this under the heat press. Now I'm not lowering the platen of the heat press. I'm just letting this hover under it at 385 degrees. Now for this process, I'm using an HTV Ront auto press, and so the first thing you need to do is make sure that auto feature is turned off. So I push this under here and I leave it for about 45 seconds. The first time I look at it, it looks pretty good. Here's some roller marks down here, very faint ones, and then up here, I can see that some of the crystals haven't melted yet. So I go ahead and turn it a quarter of the way, put it back under, and I check it every 15 seconds. So it took a few rotations to get this just the way I wanted it, but I'm just going to speed up through the rest of this and you can see the process. Now, I've seen plenty of other YouTubers do this hack differently. This is just the way I do it. So you can try it any way you want. This is what works for me. So one way that I saw someone do it is they put the powder on, and then instead of curing it, they went ahead and just put it on the shirt, and when they put it under the heat press, they allowed the heat press to basically melt it onto the shirt. Then another person that I saw, they cured the powder, but they cured it at a lower temperature, and so the sublimation ink didn't pop until they put it on the shirt. Because the instructions for the Yamation says to do it at lower temps than what sublimation ink needs and less time, I like to do it this way. All right, let me pull this up so you can see it. Okay, that is solid now. It looks great. That looks really great. Now, the drips were in the design, but I do see a few of the roller marks. I don't know if that was on the design or something else. I'll check that out and let you know. But what I like to do next is just take something that I can scrape the extra marks off. Now, before I spend a bunch of time scraping though, I'm going to go ahead and cut this closer to the design. There's no need to scrape away all the excess and then just cut it off anyway. So now all I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and scrape off where I see a little bit of excess lines. As long as I get the powder scraped off, even if you can faintly see where the lines are, theoretically this is not going to sublimate into cotton. So you need that adhesive to get the ink to stick to the cotton. So as long as I scrape away the powder, again, even if you have a faint mark, so far I haven't seen those show up on any of my items. So give me just a couple of minutes to do this and then we'll be ready to move on. In open spots, I like to use something like this. It's wider, but when you're up in the details, you really can't use this very easily. Now, one thing with this DTF hack using sublimation ink, because it's not a true DTF printer, you don't have the white ink behind all this ink. So unfortunately, you do have to do this on fairly light colors. That's the drawback of this versus true DTF. Of course, if you already have a sublimation printer and you don't want to put out the extra money for a DTF printer, this is a great thing. All right, since this is a V-neck, I can have it pretty high up, and I think that looks pretty good right there. The main thing is the gorilla can be kind of tilted. The words gorilla love needs to be pretty straight. And then this is just an old shirt that my son didn't want any longer, so I thought I'd try it out on it. So if it looks a little worn, it's not because of the brand, it's because it's several years old. You don't need heat tape because the adhesive on this is going to make it stick to the shirt, but because I need to carry it back to the heat press, I'm going to put a couple pieces on just to be safe. The only reason I had this piece of paper on it was because I could see on the back of my film I had some of that DTF powder and I didn't want that to stick to the top of my heat press. So it's easily been 10 seconds. Let's see what happens. Now that peeled off very, very nicely, very smoothly. I can see there's a little bit of ink left on my film right there, which would be right in this area. And it looks good still. Look at how dark and beautiful those colors are. That's just gorgeous. Now with True DTF, most people will do a second pressing really to just melt this down into the fabric. And so I do it on this as well. Right now, this is smooth. Where there's a lot of ink, I can't feel the texture of the shirt. Where there's just a little bit, I can feel the texture of the shirt. But I want to try to really sink that into the shirt. So I'm going to go over and press this for 10 more seconds, and I'm going to cover it with parchment paper. Now, from what I've been told, you only want to use parchment paper. You don't want to use butcher paper, you don't want to use copy paper, and you don't want to use a Teflon sheet. Let me let that cool off. That's still really hot. And that feels so much better. It feels more like it's in the shirt versus up on top. So you know when you're using HTV and you have a thick HTV and it just feels like it's kind of floating on the top, and then you get a better, thinner HTV that melts into the shirt, similar to that. Now down here in the Gorilla Love, where it's just the black and there's not a ton, I honestly can barely feel that on the shirt. And most of this up here, I can barely feel. Now, when you get up here and you have thicker colors and darker colors, I can feel it a little bit, but it does not feel like vinyl sitting on top of the shirt. So let's look at it stretch. And obviously, you're not going to stretch your clothes that much when you're wearing them. But I like to stretch it just to show you that it does move with the fibers. Super cute. So thanks so much for watching me today. I appreciate you watching and sticking it out all the way till the end. And until my next one, bye-bye.